Welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe. When we were preparing this video, this conversation, this interview, I thought that we were going to be speaking about something bad that was going to happen. On the other hand, I think that today we can say something good, and that is that the Israel did not let the proposal for modification, for change of the law of return go through. Um, to talk about things connected to this attempt at modification of the law of return, I invited a well-known rabbi who is the leader of Zionist Rabbinic Coalition, Rabbi Weinblatt, to talk to us about this issue and a more profound, deeper issue that is connected to it, and that is, who is a Jew? That is, why don't we consider a child of Jewish father and non-Jewish mother to be Jewish? Rabbi, welcome.
American Jews this will affect. You said that, that was in your opening question a moment ago. But I think it's really much more Jews, perhaps in the former Soviet Union, coming from Ukraine and from Moscow and Kiev and other places where there is this connection that exists through one Jewish grandparent. Of course, it also impacts on Jews coming from America, but it primarily seems to be those Jewish communities that are affected and impacted by it. So that's what I want to say at the outset. Second of all,
given that this is what you want to tell me, I'll tell you something else.
Yeah.
65% of all Jewish families now intermarried in the United States.
Correct.
So if, God forbid, something happens in the United States, which is not beyond impossible, all of those members of those families will be facing this issue. So it's not only for people in the former Soviet Union.
Right. No. Good point. But in terms of where it seems to have an impact today, you're talking a little further down the road, and of course you're right that the intermarriage situation in America is such that there will be a growing part of our population. So one of the things I tried to say both when I was quoted and also subsequently in a conversation I had exchange I had with Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Avichai Shikli, was to try and explain that in these issues, which have an impact on the Jews outside of the land of Israel, and the diaspora, we should try and be as inclusive as possible, as welcoming as possible. Now, that's not to say that there aren't halakhic issues involved. That's not to say that there shouldn't be ways to try and navigate that. I happen to believe in the fact that I think we should be advocates of welcoming people into the Jewish faith. We should welcome those, especially when they are there's a term for it now. It's called Zera Avraham. These are people who are the offspring of Abraham. They have the seed of Abraham, not in any kind of a racist kind of a way, but rather to say that they are to be considered part of the extended Jewish family. And the question is, we can either push them away or we can bring them closer. And in that context, many of these people, as you know, probably even better than many of our listeners, many of your listeners, myself, there certainly are people who've come from primarily, again, the former Soviet Union and elsewhere, who have adopted Israel as their country, are living in the country of Israel, are fighting in the army, and are participating and speaking Hebrew. They should be welcomed into the Jewish people. And so we need to, I think, lower that threshold, again, not to do away with it and not to negate it, but to find ways that we encourage people to be and to return Chozrei b'tshuva, to return to the Jewish fold.
Rabbi, this is very, very interesting. If I were not thinking about this issue for many, many years, I would have just taken what you just said and said, well, this is being said by a nice rabbi about important issue, and let's go with it. But I'll tell you this, Rabbi, from my point of view, most of those people, first of all, are not simply Zera Israel. seed of Israel, but 100% Jewish. That is 100% Jewish. Why? Because if you ask most of rabbis today, or just simple Jews, who is a Jew? You'll get an answer. Well, a Jew is a person whose mother is Jewish or who converted according to prescribed procedure. What about father? Father, yeah, counts, but it's not counts. But the real answer is this. Long time ago, 1800 years ago, Kiddushin 68b in Talmud declared that we do not consider a child of Jewish father, a non-Jewish mother, to be his. That is, that child is an orphan in law, in halacha. And the same thing, by the way, goes for a child of Jewish mother, who is also called zonah, a whore, and now in her husband, who is not really her husband, is not considered her husband, and is not considered the father of the child of this mother. But the mother is still Jewish, so therefore, after a number of different things, long time ago they decided, that yes, the child of this woman is not bastard, but he is a Jew. But a child of Jewish father, a non-Jewish mother, does not have father, and his mother is not Jewish, therefore he is not Jewish.
So let me respond. Did you want to continue or anything else?
What I want to say is this. We need to clarify this issue and declare that those children do have fathers. And
So-
that will affect many issues that we're dealing with.
Okay. So, as I'm a conservative rabbi, and as such, we are a halakhic movement. So you can't just throw out halakha. There are those perhaps Jews and maybe even rabbis who say that halakha is not significant. However,
I'm not throwing halakha, quite the opposite. I'm making this point with regard to halakha. I'm not talking about the good things that will come for Israel. I don't care what good things will come to Israel as people. I'm talking about that we cannot deny at birth, punish children at birth because of what their parents do.
No one's talking about punishing, but the question is, how do we define who is a Jew? And within that context, we have the guidance of halakha, which has existed and served our people for thousands of years, and which, as a result, remains the operative system. Now, the Reform movement, of course, has said that if a person has a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother, they are to be considered. But they even have a caveat. They said, provided the child is raised as a Jew.
Yeah.
So that's within the Reform movement. Conservative and Orthodox movements, however, do not recognize that.
But I do not agree with the Reform movement either.
Okay, that's your prerogative. I'm not sure
Because
what you agree with that.
Reform movement is not halachic movement.
Correct.
So when they make this decision, it's conditional. What I'm talking about is unconditional declaration that a child of Jewish father and non-Jewish mother indeed does have father. His father is a Jew,
right.
And therefore a child is a Jew.
Okay, well, but right there, you're changing halakha. You're changing halakha right there. You're saying that person having a Jewish father is a Jew. That's not halakha. And the halakhic definition of who was a Jew,
But it's not a halakha, Rabbi. It's not a halakha which was accepted fully almost 1,000 years after the first time it was passed in Kiddushin 68b. Even Rashi, when commenting, believes that a child of Jewish mother,
yes,
a non-Jewish father, must go through conversion. That is, a child of Jewish mother is not a Jew.
That's not the operating definition of
I'm
halakha.
sorry, I'm sorry, but it's 1,000 years after what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai supposedly mentioned.
Okay. So, nevertheless, the operative definition is not what you're, according to halakha, is not what you're stating, but it is one who either has a Jewish mother or one who converts and becomes a part of the Jewish people. What I've said is the following, and that is that I think we should be encouraging those, especially those who have a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother. They're part of the fold. They're part of the mishpacha, part of the family. And we need to bring them in a way which satisfies the halakhic definition. We can't just toss that out the window. In addition to that, I think we should spend a moment at least talking about the historical context as to why it is defined the way that it is. Let us not forget, and we certainly see it today in many Arab and Muslim societies, that when a woman, for example, is raped by perhaps a soldier or someone who's not part of that community, that person is inevitably excluded from the community. So what our Chazal, what our rabbis wanted to do was the exact opposite. At a time of Roman soldiers, at a time of abuse of women and so on, they said, no, we're not going to kick the child out. We're not going to kick the woman out. We're going to say that as long as they have a Jewish mother, they're part of the Jewish community. And so I think that we need to continue to extend that. I'm not prepared to change halakha. I don't have the ability, the power, or the chokhmah, the wisdom.
Rabbi, I'm fully aware of all this so-called logic of conservative movement. I disagree with it completely. And I disagree with you mentioning of some good things that rabbis were doing with regard to women, because even if she is raped, it has nothing to do with it, because a rape...
I'm explaining the origin of the halakha. But go ahead.
Origin of halakha?
The origin of that particular halakha is most likely...
I'm sorry, when there was Jesus, and supposedly he had, not Jewish father, he was not considered fully Jewish.
I don't know why you say he didn't have a Jewish father, by the way. I mean,
well, according to their own statement,
Joseph,
and according to all the tradition.
Depends how you look at it. I mean, if God was his father, which is pretty Jewish for some people, or
in
it
any
was
case,
Joseph. Joseph is part of the line of David. So
it's good that we moved from the issue of modification of the law of return to the issue of who is a Jew.
Yes.
It's very good, because it's in very, very much connected. But what you're saying is what everybody is saying. You take any Jew and ask him this question, he's going to answer the way you answered. And you say that this is halacha. What I'm saying, that this halacha that denies paternity, that creates child as an orphan, is in complete contradiction to Shmot, book of Exodus, 22, 24, where God promises death for abuse of orphans. Not simply creation of orphans, as halacha that you observe does, but for even abuse of orphans. It says, he's going to cry out to me, I'll hear, I'll make your wives widows and your children orphans.
Okay, so first of all, we have to understand that we are a religion which is based upon the Tanakh as the foundation. But the way in which it comes to life is through the filter of Chazal, the filter of our rabbis, our sages, who created the Talmud and the Midrash. And that's the interpretation. That's why, for example, when it says, just to use an example, eye for eye, a tooth for a tooth, one might read that literally and say, oh, that's what that means. It was never meant to be that. As we know, our rabbis interpret it to say it's the value of an eye for the value of a tooth.
Rabbi, I'm 100% for halacha. I do not see Torah standing alone without tradition and tradition of interpretation and all kinds of other things. What I'm saying is that the interpretation that we have received as a tradition is spit in the face of God. It's Hilul Hashem of the highest degree. That's what I'm saying. Just because you accept it, like millions of others, does not mean that it is correct. Does not mean that, in fact, what you're saying, sin in order to serve God. That's what you're saying. Sin,
I,
sin, spit in the face of God in order to serve God.
I don't recall saying that. How did you get that from what I said?
Because you're saying like this: I don't care what God said with regard to orphans. We make orphans because that's what halacha tells us.
Look, we have the famous story in the Talmud of that Lo b'shamayim hi, that the Torah is not in the heavens, but rather it's in our hands, and it's in the hands of the halachic process to be able to interpret the law.
So basically, Rabbi, if you are part of this process of holding Torah in your hand, I guess the sin is on your head as well.
If you think I'm a sinner, fine. I've been called worse things, but
I have to, yes, I know this is the normal reaction. I don't care because you know my tradition, my movement, etc., etc., etc. That's what they're saying. But I have to say, Rabbi, this: you're a conservative rabbi.
yes,
Conservative rabbis are not respected as rabbis in Israel.
it depends. It depends. Certainly,
Across the board, rabbinate does not have a
correct.
single conservative rabbi.
Correct.
Not to speak already about reform, but
Right.
conservative.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is this, Rabbi. This is also halacha according to rabbinate.
Right.
You are in violation of this. Now you're telling me, that you support this, and that's why you're halachic. And the other halachic are saying completely different, and there's even more halachic that go out to Ayatollah of Iran and scream, bomb Israel out of existence. They're also halachic.
We're complicated people, but go ahead. Yeah.
Rabbi, what I'm saying is really simple and needs to be understood. You cannot punish children for what their parents are doing. I'm against intermarriage. Completely. Intermarriage is death to Jewish people. But I'm against even more of punishing children of intermarried families.
So I must confess, by the way, and tell you that you've stated that that a child of a Jewish father but a non-Jewish mother is an orphan and they don't exist. And everything. These are things I must tell you. I'm going to confess my ignorance. I've never heard this before. I really haven't, and
I'm going to repeat it, Rabbi.
From,
Kiddushin Talmud Bavli Kiddushin 68b and Talmud Yevamot 92a.
Okay, I'm going to look those up. Yeah. Kedushin. Where'd you say 68b?
68b and 92a. Yevamot.
And what specifically are you referring to in 68b?
68b is that we do not call the father of that child his father.
So it seems to be as if it's quoting and referring to something in the book of Exodus. It seems
no. It has nothing to do with it's in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and in that particular place, it's not does not refer to the book of Exodus. What I'm saying is, I'm telling you that in the book of Exodus 22, 22, 24, God says, I'll kill you for abuse of widows and orphans. I'll kill you.
Okay, so I see the reference here to Shimon Bar Yochai, who's discussing a verse from the book of Deuteronomy. And he does say that the offspring of someone from a Jewish woman is called your son, but your son from a Gentile woman is not called your son, but her son. I'm not saying that the child is an orphan. That's why
68b. You need to find it. Yes.
I'm glancing at it.
And it's with regard to father and not to a woman.
Yeah. Again.
And by the way, when I said Yevamot 92a, This goes for children of Jewish women and non-Jewish men. Those children also do not have father, according to 92a.
Just glancing at it very quickly, there's a difference between saying one does not have status within the context of Jewish law and saying the person doesn't have a father. Obviously, they have a father, and
Obviously, they do, and maybe very loving father.
But I think it's absurd to say that Judaism would say that they don't have a father. We don't believe in virgin birth.
I'm sorry, you consider halacha to be of great value. Now, if I say within the law that this guy is not a citizen of the United States, by law, he is not a citizen of the United States. And the same thing within.
He's not a person. That doesn't mean he's not a father.
What is it?
It doesn't mean that he's not a person. It doesn't mean that he's not a father. And so,
if a judge declares that a child of a Vietnam veteran and a Vietnamese woman is not his, that child is not American and does not have father. No matter what that woman says, no matter what that child says.
Person, not a father. A father is a father is a father.
I understand that that's what you're saying. Biological father is a father, father. Hopefully that is correct, but I do not know if it is correct. Now, within understanding of halacha, we trust women more than we trust men, but that's not the point. What I'm saying is this. The halacha needs to be changed. Our understanding needs to be changed. We cannot deny children of Jewish fathers and non-Jewish mothers the status of being a child of a Jewish father, and thus the status of being 100% Jewish. 100, you hear me? Not half Jewish, not quarter Jewish, 100% Jewish.
That's fine, you believe that? When you become ordained?
I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with belief. That I believe is...
No, that's your personal belief. It just so happens it's not acceptable.
This is what I'm saying.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying.
You're entitled to believe that, to feel that way, and to advocate for that. But that doesn't mean that is the reality.
But if I cannot get through you, who I can get through to?
You know what? That's we need to have some kind of maybe a rabbinical council, a Sanhedrin, or a response that's written.
Yeah, I was thinking about speaking about it to Dorf. Okay. And I spoke to a number of conservative rabbis, and those that I spoke with agree with me. You don't.
No, because and I'm sure some of those who you didn't speak with would not agree with you as well.
And what I'm saying is that this issue today, like for the last 3,500 years, is the most important Jewish question.
I'm going to disagree on that, because I think the most important Jewish question right now is a question of Jewish survival, of Jewish people feeling a part of the Jewish people.
No. We cannot talk about Jewish survival without first understanding who is a Jew.
I'm talking about Jews being living a Jewish life. Jews wanting to pass on Judaism to their children. These are the most.
Wow, keep me up. Rabbi, you are so good. So let me take you a little bit down the road there. I spoke some time ago to what's her name, Serge de la Pergola, the number one demographer of Jewry. He is a professor of Hebrew University, and I asked him, try to help me understand who is the Jew, how many Jews in the world. So that we're talking, he said, well, there's 15.5 million Jews in the world. I say, really? And how do you define it? Well, he says, we try to stay with the Orthodox definition of who is a Jew. And I say, all those 15.5 million practicing Jews? No, he says. And how many not practicing? He says, well, there's 2 million of them say that they're not Jewish. And I say, wow, very interesting. And are there Jews that you do not consider to be Jewish, but I consider to be Jewish? He says, yes, there's 9 million of Jews in the world like that. There is Jews whose father is Jewish.
I don't think the number is that large, but keep going. Go ahead.
9 million. Now, what happens is this. that among um, these fervently Orthodox people in Israel, in the government and Knesset and Rabbinate, ask him, you want to remove this grandchild clause. Really? What if it's a granddaughter of great granddaughter of granddaughter of daughter of a Jew? What happens to that little girl who goes to church and mother who has huge cross on her chest? Oh, yeah, I understand that this is, yeah, she's Jewish. Can you believe it?
I
She's
understand.
Jewish. You telling me about halacha?
I want to get back to where we started with our conversation and make one important thing, because as you're talking about this, there's a distinction between the Chok HaShvut, which is the law of return, which has to do with admitting people into Israel as citizens. And then there's also the aspect of one's status as a Jew. Those are not necessarily the same. And those aspects of, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this little bit of a difference of opinion in terms of this. So we're talking about people becoming a part of the Jewish nation, and citizens of Israel and being able to live in Israel. And then on the other hand, we're talking about people becoming part of the Jewish people. And what I've said is that I would welcome the first, but I would want to facilitate the ability and to make it easier for the second to happen. That's all I'm saying.
And what I'm saying is this, that those, first of all, let me return to my example of this great granddaughter whose grandmother and mother have huge crosses in there. When they come to Israel, if they come to Israel, they hide those crosses. But when they tell, when you ask a great law decider, Jewish law decider, is this great granddaughter Jewish? He'll say, yes, she is. Yes, she is. A son of a Jewish father and non-Jewish mother fighting now in Gaza. And if he gets killed, he's going to be buried in a horrible place away. Maybe now they changed a little bit above, a little bit below, etc., but not in a respectable way as a Jew. Now, what I'm saying is this. You're telling me about halacha. I say halacha sins in such a horrible way that it's impossible to even imagine for a normal person. Sins. That is our tradition. Tradition of our people is a tradition of horrible sinners. Now, it was long ago when there was tightly knit communities, the number of those sinners were not that big. But
Who are you
now,
considering to be sinners? Who are you saying are the sinners?
the Jews,
When they do what?
when they don't recognize a child of Jewish man and non-Jewish woman to be a fully Jewish child.
Again, that's going to be your definition of a sinner. That's not necessarily anyone.
This
I
is
would,
also Exodus 22:22.
okay. Look, I think obviously the way in which you're throwing around these terms of being sinners and that all Jews are sinners, I reject that, and don't accept.
I'm sorry, I do not consider myself a sinner in this particular respect. I have sinned in many, many other ways. I'm a great sinner, when there's going to be Yom Kippur, I'm going to be enumerating many, 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 many things. But
As
this is not one thing that I'm going to enumerate. I don't deny a child of Jewish father to have a father.
Again, we're disagreeing about that because the question is the status of the father in Jewish law. That individual who's not Jewish does not have a status in Jewish law. It's the same way as, for example, if I'm a rabbi, which I am, and I have somebody, and I can, let's just say I'm licensed to do weddings in the state of Maryland, by way of example. And I have somebody from the state of Maryland, and I have somebody from the state of Delaware, and they want to get married, and they want to get married in Illinois. I don't have the power, the authority to be able to do that because my authority comes within that particular context of the area where I do have authority. It's a similar kind of a thing in certain respects.
I understand. Rabbi, as I said, uh, we're not talking about that the child does not hear father. A child may or may not hear father if father leaves him.
Okay, we're making
But
some progress here then. Good. Go
yeah,
ahead.
but if a father, but even if the father leaves him, does not mean that he is not biological father.
Correct.
You mentioned Zerah Israel. Zerah Israel, that's what it's all about. But that's not simply Zerah Israel, some halachic status or some, exception. What I'm saying is this a child of Jewish father is 100% Jew, regardless whether he observes anything.
Within
Now,
your definition, but go ahead.
once he grows up and he decides to become Christian or Muslim or Martian or whatever he wants to be, it's his problem. It's his business. What I'm saying, I'm talking about responsibility of our people as those that follow the laws of Torah.
And what I'm saying is that in those situations that you're referring to right now, it's incumbent upon us, members of the Jewish community, not all of a sudden just to throw it out the baby with the bathwater, but rather to say, let us find the ways that we welcome these people. Let us find the ways in which they
But you
will
see,
then be recognized by everyone, not just by Alexander Gendler in Chicago, but will be recognized across the board as part of the Jewish people.
you want them to
Community.
convert, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do not want them to convert.
Okay.
Because conversion, quite the opposite. The act of conversion will mean their declaration that they do not have their biological father as father.
Not saying it's saying that their mother's not
That
biological.
they now have Abraham as their father.
But it's also saying that they don't have a Jewish mother. That's all. My grandmother came to this country from Russia in the early 1900s, and she died in her late 80s or so. She was never became a citizen of the United States, and in her late 80s, a few years before she died, she wanted to study to become an American citizen. She recognized she wasn't able to vote. She wasn't a part of the American society officially. So it's a similar kind of a thing. She was here in America. She paid taxes. She lived in this country. She raised my mother, et cetera, et cetera. But officially, she was not a part of she was not considered American. And so there was a simple process. She didn't fight the process. She didn't say this, that. She said, okay, that's how you join. So when somebody wants to join a country club, there are rules of that country club. This is what you got to do to join. You want to join the club? This is what you got to do. That's it.
No, this is an example, but not a good example. A better example would be if your mother was born in the United States and then with communist parents in the 1930s moved to the Soviet Union and lived there all her life. And then when she was 80, decided to come back to the United States. But when she went to Russia, she was a little girl and she did not learn anything and she was not fully sure. But by coming to the United States, she still, despite the fact that she was a communist there and everything else, she still would be automatically recognized as American citizen. This is the proper example.
And that's why the example of the child of a Jewish mother works as well.
No, but there's a child of Jewish father. And let me put it another thing, Rabbi. Jewish mother. Yeah, we love our mothers. I certainly love my mother even more than my father. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But to insist that it is mother who makes a child Jewish, that is mother, when all the rights to the land of Israel are transmitted almost exclusively through fathers. Torah is transmitted almost exclusively through male line. And to say that, oh, mother, that's what counts in that respect, is to say that God is a fool, total fool. Instead of making his covenant with Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, he makes this covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh my God. Don't you know who's a real Jew? Who really needs to be? Because the child is closer to the mother.
Correct. which is one of the other reasons why definition often comes through the mother as well of religion. But go
But
ahead.
it's not. The reason it comes through mother is because in all slave-based societies, the definition of status was transmitted when there was no legally recognized marriage. The status was transmitted through mother. It was in ancient Rome, it was in ancient Greece, it was in the United States until 1867. In southern United States, laws of Virginia stipulated that status is transmitted through mother until 1867. Why? It was the same way in Rome, because for very simple reason. I'm a slave owner. I have my legitimate wife, but she's a little bit older. And there's this young slave girl, that I want to have. And but then, as a result, is a child, and of course, my legitimate wife, like Sarah of Abraham, demands either kill the child or sell him.
Exactly. Say that she said.
And that is it's not only I suggested. Many others who studied the issue clearly stated that this particular tendency was in order to preserve legitimate families within the framework of the slave-based societies. Nothing to do with what you mentioned before, saving a woman from rape, etc., etc. By the way, a woman raped in halacha, a Jewish woman raped in halacha, is thrown out of her family if halacha is followed clearly.
And where are you getting that one from?
Rabbi, if you are interested,
maybe you were able to cite some kind of a remote text there, but
a remote text
history and of Jewish contemporary life, I've never heard of some of the things you're saying today, including that one that a Jewish woman who was raped is thrown out of society. That's a
very much so. And don't forget that halacha calls all women that married non-Jewish men zanot, whores.
Yeah, no, there again, I don't know the chapter and verse that you're citing for that one either.
I'm going to give it to you. What do you think? I'm a walking encyclopedia. I'm just a little guy here in Chicago who knows very little.
Okay. Alex, I'm going to have to bring our conversation to a close in a few moments, so I want to be sure we have a chance to tie things up in any kind of a way that you would like to.
Rabbi, okay, so let's tighten it up. As you said, we agree on one thing, that the law of return should not be modified, right?
Correct. We agree on that, maybe for different reasons, but we agree on that. Yes.
Okay, and by the way, maybe you do, maybe you don't. What happened Sunday?
Yes, I'm aware of the fact that it was deferred and was not, and that it did not move forward. Correct.
The Ministerial Committee on Legislature,
correct,
which is made up of all kinds of people that really want this law to pass.
Right.
Do you know why they decided not to go with it?
I'm going to guess because they saw my quote in the JTA.
That could be a good reason. I certainly would go with it if I see, Rabbi Weinblatt, saying it. But maybe because Netanyahu told them, don't do it because I'm traveling to the United States.
There's a possibility. I will tell you this, as I mentioned before, I did have a private communication with Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, and I conveyed the fact that I think that this would not be a step that would be well received, and encouraged him. And then he responded back even before the vote and said, "Don't worry, it's not going to happen." And in fact, that was correct.
Rabbi, I have no problem, attributing this good thing happening to your conversation.
No. Oh my God, I didn't mean to say that was because of that by any means. But I'm just saying I don't think that it was.
My question is this: so it did not happen this Sunday, but we know that many people in coalition have been trying to do it over a number of years.
Sure.
So it did not happen this Sunday. There's no guarantee that it will not happen 2 Sundays, 3 Sundays from now. In fact, I was thinking, that given the difficult situation that Netanyahu is in with his coalition, with all these Haredim and all other people, pushing in that direction, that he might just give in. But something happened there.
I think, first of all, Prime Minister Netanyahu, many people don't give him the credit for the fact that he is sensitive to relations with Jews in the diaspora. And well, at the same token, he has to be sensitive to the other voices in his coalition and the Haredim. Can you imagine how many different directions he has pulled in? But he recognizes that this is an important constituent. I will tell you this, Alex, if I may. I led a delegation of rabbis in a mission when we had a meeting with the prime minister in his office, maybe about two and a half years ago or so. And as we were meeting in his office, he was flanked on both sides by security ministers. And it occurred to me afterwards and through the conversation why these individuals were there. And that is because the Jews in the diaspora are considered to be a national security asset of the state of Israel. And we must always remember that. That's one of the reasons why I founded the coalition of the Zionist Rabbinic Coalition of rabbis, over 1,000 rabbis from all different movements who believe and recognize the importance of strengthening the unity that exists between us. And that's what we're committed to doing.
Rabbi, this is another question that I wanted to ask you. Over 1,000 rabbis in your coalition.
Yeah.
I would imagine that there would be 10,000 rabbis in that coalition. Why only 1,000?
Because we're a new organization and we're getting up to there, and from God's mouth from your mouth to God's ears, that we will reach that. I don't think there are quite 10,000 rabbis in America. But look, you know what, Alex?
There are 2,000 rabbis signed a letter condemning, on behalf of Hamas, virtually. Harvard University.
2000. But the point is, certainly that's what I was going to say. There are rabbis who do not place the interests of the Jewish people first and foremost. And that is a problem. And that's why we're building our coalition. It's only a couple of years old, a few years old, our organization. And hopefully, Ken Yerbu, we're going to continue to grow. And maybe people who are seeing the show will speak to their rabbis or rabbis who are seeing it. And will search us out at zionistrabbis.org is our website. We welcome your participation, comments, and support.
Rabbi, I'm 100% on your side. As far as your coalition is concerned, I certainly support Israel as a Jewish state, regardless whether it's democracy, republic, monarchy, theological dictatorship. I don't care. But what I do care, because, in theological dictatorship, like in Iran, I would not be able to function. I would not be able to live. But what I'm saying is this, that we should not sin and say that we're doing something good. We should not lie to ourselves.
I agree. Where we disagree may be in the definition of what constitutes a sin. But obviously, I agree that we should not be sinning. I don't think there's any rabbi who would be in favor of sinning. I don't think they would last too long.
Yes, many rabbis will, but many rabbis also will say that there's no 10 commandments, there's only 10 suggestions. I mean, many rabbis say all kinds of things.
Correct. But I think we're pretty united in being opposed to sin. I think that's one thing. Maybe one of a few things, maybe all rabbis.
But it depends what we consider
there we go.
Be sin.
That's true.
You see, because, like, for example, when Ezra, upon return from Persia, from Babylon, told, fathers, get rid of your children.
Yes, get rid of your non-Jewish wives. Yeah.
No. Get rid of your children. The fact that they have non-Jewish wives is one thing, but get rid of your children. Your children of those wives, get rid of them. And those fathers, let me ask you a question. If somebody would tell you, for whatever reason, get rid of your son or daughter, would you do that?
Depends how I'm feeling about them at that moment. I'm just kidding. I have 4 wonderful children. I have 9 wonderful grandchildren. I love them dearly.
Yeah, and nobody tells you savage thing like that.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, Alex, this has been a wonderful opportunity to speak with you, and I have enjoyed it very much. And
nice speaking to you, Rabbi, and I hope we'll keep in touch because I intend to make a point of having conservative movement to at least follow the example set in 1983 by reform movement, or better yet, example of a split off from you, who I disagree with regard on many issues, reconstructionist movement, but which unconditionally said that a child of Jewish mother or Jewish father is 100% Jewish in 1978. So what I'm talking about, you have some people in your conservative movement that really resist change because they're not fully reformed, they're not fully orthodox, they want to be accepted at this and this and this and this. What I'm saying is this: this is a very, very important issue, and it cannot be solved by, as you say, by welcoming those people. I mean, one of the reasons I do not fully agree with reformers is because, take a look. Yeah, we recognize them if they manifest publicly signs of commitment to Jewish people. In the Soviet Union, for 3 generations, no public signs of identification with Jewish people could have been possible at all. And Soviet Union is not the only place where such things did, could, or may again take place. And also, regardless of the situation, I say that we have to have some kind of a heart and soul and commitment to tzedek, tirdof.
Absolutely. And on that we can agree.
Anyway, as they say in China, Rabbi, and say hello to Netanyahu, because as I told you before, from a critic of 24 years ago, I became his fervent admirer.
Wonderful.
Because the guy, to go through hell that he's been subjected to is just impossible, and he stays. And I hope that his health is going to be okay.
Thank you. Be gesund. Thank you.
Sei gesund. I'll talk to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.